Tom Cruise is 64 years old, and the last time he was strapped to the outside of a moving aircraft, the thing holding him there was mostly his own hands. If the name is only half familiar, he is the American actor who has spent 40 years running full tilt through the middle of his own films, and who insists on doing the dangerous parts himself, instead of handing them to a younger man in a wig. And the first of the 5 things that keeps a 64-year-old body able to do that is not a machine, not a supplement, and not a gym membership. It is his grip. That is where we start, because that is where his whole method actually starts, whether or not anyone has ever put it that way. A man who hangs off the side of an Airbus A400M as it climbs off a runway in Oxfordshire is a man whose hands, forearms, and shoulders have to write a check his body can cash. He did that 8 times, by the way, 8 separate takes, hanging off the fuselage of a military transport plane at 1,000 feet, and then he came down and asked to go again. Now, the plain caution before we go a step further, because I would rather bore you than hurt you. Nothing in the next half hour is a treatment for anything, and none of it is instructions from a professional. If your balance is uncertain, keep a hand on a counter or the back of a chair the whole way through. If you have a shoulder that has already told you it is unhappy, or a recent fall behind you, take this to your doctor before you take it to your kitchen. Every movement here has a smaller version, and I will give you the smaller version every single time. Here is why the hands come first. And it is not because hanging off airplanes is a life goal for anyone watching. Your grip is the only muscle in your body you use every single hour you are awake and never once train on purpose. The kettle, the bag of shopping, the banister on the way down, the lid that will not shift, and it fades quietly, without a single dramatic moment, until the day it stops being about jars and starts being about whether you can hold on when your foot goes. So the first move, and you can do it while I talk. Take hold of something and hold on. A counter edge, the back of a heavy chair, the handles of 2 full shopping bags, a doorway bar if you have one. 10 seconds, then 20. That is the whole exercise, and there is no equipment on earth that does it better than a bag of potatoes. What matters is the hold, and that you get slightly worse at letting go each week. I want to hand you the study on this properly, because it is one of the strangest findings in the whole of aging research, and it deserves better than being waved at. Taina Rantanen and her colleagues followed men from their middle years into old age, and what they found was that how hard those men could squeeze in midlife forecast whether they would be disabled 25 years later. 25 years ahead of time. A hand dynamometer, a squeeze, a number written down. Here is what it does not show, and I want to be straight about it. Squeezing harder does not buy the years. Grip is a mirror, not a lever. It reads out how much of you is still being asked to work. And it reads it earlier, and more honestly than almost anything else you could measure. There is a version of this hold that most people have never tried, and that I would put money on being the single most underrated thing in this video, and it belongs to Cruise more than almost anyone. Hanging, not pull-ups, just hanging, with your arms above you, letting your own weight pull gently down through the shoulder. 15 years ago, he went up the outside of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the tallest building in the world, on the glass, above the 130th floor, and although there were wires and a harness and a team of very careful people, the hands doing the holding were his. A shoulder that is regularly hung from is a shoulder that keeps its space. A shoulder that is never taken overhead slowly closes, and the closing is silent until the day the top cupboard is out of reach. Your version does not require a building. If you have a sturdy doorway bar, take some of your weight through it with your feet still on the floor, and simply be there for 10 seconds. If you do not, take hold of a heavy kitchen table or a solid worktop. Lean back slightly so your arms take a little of you, and hold that instead. Feet stay down, always. And if a shoulder objects, even mildly, that is the end of the experiment for today. I am not being cautious for the sake of it. A shoulder that has been ignored for 20 years will not be talked into anything in one afternoon. There is a twin to the hold that nobody thinks of as exercise, and I would rank it above half the machines in any gym: carrying, picking a heavy thing up, walking with it, and putting it down again. It is the single most honest test of a whole body there is, because it asks the hands, the forearms, the shoulders, the spine, and both legs the same question at the same time. Farmers did it for 10,000 years and never called it anything. Now people pay a subscription to do it holding a plastic handle attached to a stack of numbers. Your version, Bring the shopping in from the car in one trip, on purpose, and do not set it down halfway. Which brings me to the thing I got expensively wrong. Years ago, I bought a grip trainer with a dial on the side and a spring inside it, because it looked serious and it had numbers on it. I clicked through the settings, I made the thing squeak, and I felt like a man taking his health in hand. It lasted about a fortnight. Then one evening I could not get the lid off a jar of pickled beetroot and stood there in my own kitchen realizing the jar was the trainer, had always been the trainer, and had cost me nothing. The gadget is in a drawer somewhere. The jars are on the shelf, and they are undefeated, which is as good a moment as any to name the thing this channel is quietly at war with, because it will keep turning up. Every year there is a new machine that promises to give you back what you stopped doing. A plate that vibrates, a belt that pulses, a device with a dial and a spring. And none of the people I have spent 30 years watching stay strong into their 80s were doing anything you could buy. Not one of them. The equipment aisle exists because free things are hard to sell, not because free things do not work. Cruise's second move is the one I would guess almost nobody watching has done this month. And it is not hard, it is only forgotten. It is rotation, turning. The rib cage moving independently of the hips, the way it does when you climb, when you fence, when you throw a punch, when you look properly over your shoulder to reverse a car. And rotation is the first thing a body loses when it spends its days pointed forwards at a screen and a windscreen and a television. His documented training rotates through sea kayaking, fencing, jogging, rock climbing, and hiking, 6 days a week. Notice what all but one of those have in common. A paddle turns you, a blade turns you, a climb turns you, constantly, because your hand is going somewhere your hips are not. That variety is not him being a dilettante with too much money and too many hobbies. It is the actual mechanism. A body that only ever moves in one plane quietly forgets the other two. Your version is free and takes 40 seconds. Sit tall or stand with a hand resting on something solid. Cross your arms over your chest and turn to look behind you, slowly, as far as the turn goes without pain, and let your eyes lead. Hold for a breath. Come back through the middle and go the other way. Do that a handful of times each side and pay attention to whether one direction is noticeably meaner than the other, because it will be. And that asymmetry is worth more information than any number you could measure. The gymnast I mentioned in another one of these, Johanna Quaz, is not the person I want to reach for here. The one I keep coming back to is Jackie Chan, who is 72 and who I talked about not long ago, and who spent his entire working life doing exactly what Cruise does now. What is interesting is not that Chan can still move. It is what he says he does about it, which is stretch, every day, without exception, and has since he was a child in an opera school. 2 men, 2 continents, 40 years of falling off things, and the maintenance they both settled on is unglamorous and daily and free. Now, the next one is the thing everybody associates with the man, and I very nearly left it out because it looked too obvious to be worth teaching until I noticed that the version he does and the version people think he does are not the same activity at all, and the difference is the whole reason he still has any stamina at 64. Tom Cruise runs. He runs in almost every film he has made, at an angle no ordinary person achieves, and he has been documented as building his conditioning specifically around sprinting and aerobic work so that his stamina holds up through the chase sequences. Which sounds like an actor's problem until you notice that stamina is exactly what disappears from an ordinary life first, one small surrender at a time. You are not going to sprint. I am not asking you to, and I would not ask a 68-year-old knee to do that on my say-so. What I am asking is smaller, and it works. On your next walk, pick 2 lampposts, or a gate, and a post box, and for that stretch only, walk faster than is comfortable. Not jogging. Just faster, until talking would be a nuisance. Then go back to your normal pace, and let your breathing come down. Do that twice in a walk. That is it. A body that never once goes faster than its comfortable pace is a body that quietly redefines its comfortable pace downwards every year until the definition is a shuffle. And there is a piece of his preparation that sits underneath the running, and that almost nobody connects to it. For one of the films he did a halo jump high altitude, low opening, out of an aircraft at 25,000 feet, where the air is thin enough to matter, and a man can lose consciousness on the way down if his body has not been taught to cope. They reportedly needed 106 jumps to get the shot they wanted, because the light at dusk lasted 3 minutes a day. 106. What that kind of work actually trains, underneath the spectacle, is the ability to keep functioning while the oxygen situation is inconvenient, which, translated into an ordinary life at 70, is the difference between a flight of stairs being a flight of stairs and a flight of stairs being an event you have to plan for. There is a wrinkle here I find genuinely funny. He broke his ankle in 2017 jumping between two rooftops in London for a film, and the take that ended up on screen has him landing, hearing the bone go, and running on for several more steps because the camera was still rolling. I am not holding that up as a model. It is the opposite of what I would tell anyone. But it tells you something real about how the man is put together. And it tells you something about ankles too, which is that they are load-bearing in a way we ignore until the day they are the whole story. Now stop what you are doing, because it is time for the 60-second test. And this one is the easiest one I have ever asked of anybody. Go and find the stiffest jar in your kitchen, the one at the back. Take the lid in your dominant hand and squeeze it as if you meant to open it, and hold that squeeze for a slow count of 5. Then do exactly the same with the other hand. You are not trying to open it. You are collecting information. Which hand gave up first, and by how much? If a jar is not to hand, squeeze a rolled-up tea towel instead, and if either shoulder or wrist complains at all, stop there and take that complaint seriously. That difference between your two hands is your baseline. Write it on the calendar. We will come back to it. Now, what comes next is the one I would fight for, because it is the exact place I think ordinary fitness advice for older people has been getting it backwards for 40 years, and it is the difference between a person who sits down in a chair and a person who falls into one. It is landing. Everybody talks about getting up. Almost nobody talks about going down. And going down under control, absorbing your own weight on the way rather than surrendering to it, turns out to be a trainable skill that nearly every program aimed at older bodies leaves out entirely. Cruise's version of this is absurd and instructive. For the motorcycle jump off a cliff in the last but one film, the training reportedly ran to something like 13,000 motocross jumps and more than 500 skydives before they shot it once. 13,000 landings. He did not practice the flying. Anyone can fly. He practiced arriving. Your version happens on the bottom stair, and it is one of the most useful minutes you will spend this week. Stand on the bottom step with one hand on the banister. Put one foot out into the air over the floor below, and lower yourself slowly, under control, until that foot touches down, then come back up. Slowly is the entire exercise. If that is too much, do it from a low doorstep or a thick book, and keep the hand on the rail. What you are training is the muscle at the front of the thigh working while it lengthens, which is the exact quality that catches you when a curb comes up sooner than you expected. And here is the sentence I would tattoo on the inside of the fitness industry's eyelids if I could. The body does not keep what it is never asked for, not out of spite. It is simply a very good accountant, and it will not pay to maintain a capacity you have not requisitioned in 4 years. The ability to lower yourself under control is a capacity. Nobody removes it from you. You let the subscription lapse. I will admit the thing I had backwards for the best part of a decade, since we are being honest with each other. I chased the sweat. I thought the proof was in how wrecked you felt afterwards, and I said so. Out loud. To rooms full of people who believed me. The quiet stuff, the hold, the turn, the slow step down, the balance nonsense that looks like nothing that was the material actually keeping people out of a care home, and I had it filed under warm-up for years. I have had to go back and say so to some of those people's faces since, which is a specific kind of character building, which leaves the last one, and I have held it back on purpose, because it will sound the least like exercise of anything I have said, and I think it matters more after 50 than the other 4 put together. It came out of a throwaway line from the man who runs his stunts. The stunt coordinator on those films has described Cruise designing his own physical preparation, and one specific detail stuck with me. For the wingsuit and speed fly sequences, he worked out a way to keep his core braced while his arms were up and out so that he was not fatiguing or getting hurt in a position his body would otherwise hate. Arms overhead, that is the position. And it is the exact position that disappears from an ordinary life somewhere in your 60s without ceremony, because you stop putting things on the top shelf and start putting them on the counter, and then one day the top shelf is simply not yours anymore. Reaching up with your body still under control, rather than arching your back to fake the extra inches, is a skill, and it is a skill on a use-it-or-lose-it contract. So the move, stand with your back to a wall, heels a few inches out from the skirting, Press your lower back gently towards the wall so there is no gap behind it. Then raise both arms up over your head and try to touch the wall above you without letting that gap open up. Most people cannot the first time. That gap opening is your body cheating, borrowing the range from your spine because the shoulders will not give it. Do it a few times a day, hold for a couple of breaths, and stop the moment anything pinches. Sit in a chair to do it if standing is awkward, and it works just as well. There is one more thing about that arms overhead position that I only understood late, and it is about breathing. For an underwater sequence in one of the earlier films, he trained his breath hold up past 6 minutes and shot the scene in long single takes rather than cutting it together. 6 minutes is a startling number on its own. But the useful part for you and me is what breath holding work actually does, which is teach the rib cage to move properly again. And a rib cage that has stiffened is a rib cage that cannot let your arms go overhead without your lower back doing the job instead. Try it now, sitting where you are. Breathe all the way out, right to the bottom, then let the air come back in and feel where it goes. If it only goes into the top of your chest and your shoulders rise, that is the stiffness talking, and it is the reason the wall reach is harder than it should be. Now let me be honest about the ceiling on all of this. Because you will have already thought it, and it deserves an answer rather than a dodge. Tom Cruise has a team. He has time, money, a stunt coordinator, medical support, and whatever hand of genetic cards he was dealt in 1962. Copying his method will not turn you into him, and it was never going to. What movement does is stack the odds. It does not issue guarantees. Nobody honest has ever issued one, and anyone who does is selling something. Genes are real. Luck is real. A friend of mine did everything right and got dealt something awful anyway. And the part you actually own, the showing up, the boring daily installments, is both smaller than the industry pretends and far larger than the people who have given up want to believe. If you want the whole thing set out in order, the 5 movements written down, the smaller version of each one for the first fortnight, and the sequence to build them in, so you are not trying to do all 5 badly at once. I have put that together and the link is in the description below. The ordering is the part nobody ever gives you, and the ordering is most of why people quit. That is all I will say about it. Now, the part of Cruise's approach that I think is the actual secret, and it is not any of the 5. The variety. 6 days a week, rotating through kayaking and fencing and running and climbing and walking up hills. He is not doing one thing well. He is doing many things adequately, and the many things is the point, because each of them asks his body for a different shape, and the body has to keep all of those shapes on file. Compare that with a man who has done the same 3 machines in the same order twice a week since 2009 and cannot understand why the stairs got harder anyway. He trained. He just kept ordering off the same page of the menu. Let me put an ordinary face on all of this, because the man with the helicopter is not the person any of us actually are. Picture a woman of 73 who lives on her own in a first-floor flat. She is fine. She would tell you she is fine, and she would mean it. But over about 4 years, a set of small negotiations happened that she never once noticed making. She started buying the smaller bag of cat litter. She started doing 2 trips from the car instead of 1. She moved the good plates down from the top cupboard to the counter and told herself it was more sensible there anyway. She stopped opening jars and started tapping the lid with a knife, and then started buying the ones with the ring pull. Not one of those was a decision. Every one of them was a capacity quietly handed back. Nothing dramatic happened to her. That is the entire point, and it is why this is worth half an hour of your evening. There was no fall, no diagnosis, no moment. There was a slow, polite, 4-year withdrawal from her own life, conducted entirely by herself, in her own kitchen, one small, sensible adjustment at a time. And the thing about every single one of those adjustments is that they are reversible, and they are reversible with a jar, and a bottom stair, and a wall. There is a small piece of this I want to give you because it delights me, and because it is the kind of thing you cannot get from a fitness poster. Cruise is a qualified pilot. He flies his own aircraft, including a helicopter he learned to fly to a genuinely serious standard for one of the films. And there is a sequence in that film where he is flying the machine and acting in it at the same time. What that requires, physically, is not strength. It is the ability to hold a position, under load, while your brain does something entirely unrelated, which is exactly what carrying a full kettle across a kitchen while talking to your daughter requires. and exactly the thing that goes first when a body starts to fail. The stakes are different. The skill is identical. Here is where most people watching will go wrong with all 5 of these, and I would rather you skip the error than discovered it. You will try to do them all, tomorrow, properly, for 40 minutes. And on Thursday you will be busy, and on Friday it will feel like a chore, and by the second week it will have quietly joined the other things you were going to do. The fix is almost insultingly simple. Attach each one to something you already do without thinking. The hold happens when the kettle is on. The turn happens when you sit down at the table. The wall reach happens on the way past the wall. Nobody has ever kept a routine that needed a decision. One more thing about that jar, because people always ask, and it is genuinely interesting. A gap between your 2 hands is normal. Your dominant side is usually a little stronger, and nobody sensible worries about a small difference. What is worth paying attention to is a gap that is large, or a gap that is opening up over months, or a hand that has gone weak on the side you actually use most, because that combination is the body flagging something rather than just being lopsided. Take that one to your doctor rather than to a video. Everything else here is yours to work on tonight. I will give you the refinements now, the small things that turn something that works into something that lasts. Do the hold with 2 bags rather than 1, so the load is even and your spine is not asked to lean. On the step down, the slower you go, the better it works, and 3 slow ones beat 15 fast ones by a distance. On the turn, let your eyes go first, and your neck will stop fighting you. And the reach against the wall is the one people quietly skip because it is unimpressive and nothing burns, which is precisely why it is the one I would keep if you made me throw the other 4 away. There is a texture to this that I find myself thinking about. A public gym at 6 in the morning, before the heating has caught up, where the metal handles are cold enough to make you flinch, and there are always 2 or 3 people well past 70 already there, not making a performance of it, not filming it, just keeping an appointment they made with themselves some years ago. That is where the results in this video actually come from, not from a wall of monitors. From people who turned up on a Tuesday in February when nobody would have known if they hadn't. So think about your own week honestly for a moment. Not the ideal week, the real one, with the appointments and the grandchildren and the day that always gets away from you. Where would 40 seconds of turning actually fit? Which stair? Which kettle? Answer that with real rooms and real times, because a plan with no address is a plan that will be gone by the weekend. And do the jar tonight. That is the whole of your homework, and I mean it as the entire assignment, not 5 moves. 1 squeeze, each hand, 5 seconds, and the honest noticing of which one gave up first. In 6 weeks you run it again with the same jar, and the difference between those 2 moments will tell you more than any mirror in your house ever has. If this is the kind of plain, unhurried company you want on a Tuesday, subscribe and the next one will find its way to you. But that is for later. Right now there is a jar at the back of a cupboard with a lid that has been winning for 2 years, and a man of 64 somewhere in England this morning, chalk drying on his hands, going up for the 8th take because the 7th was not quite right,